All right, 6:29. I was waiting for it to go to 6:30, but you know what? Thank you all for coming promptly at 6, and I hope you had some fun socializing with your friends and neighbors. I just want to say thank you for coming. My name is Carol Robidoux. If you don't know me, I'm the publisher of Manchester Inklink, and this is our second candidate forum in this election cycle. We are so excited to be able to bring the candidates here and to give you a chance to hear them speak on the issues that matter most to you. I want to thank a few people. I want to thank the Rex Theater and Peter Ramsey for their generosity in allowing us to use their facility. I want to thank City Hall Pub and Tim Baines, who generously helped sponsor this event so that we could have some bartenders in the back. And if you'd like to thank Tim properly, please go see him after the event for another drink. I'll be there watching the Phillies. I want to thank Judy Window from Diz's Cafe, who's up here in the front row. She's standing, but you can't tell. No, just kidding. She's tiny. But she's our timekeeper, and she has a timekeeping paddle, which she will keep the candidates on track. I want to thank very much Andrew Sylvia, who is my assistant editor, and he will be your moderator for the evening. I want to thank Manchester Public TV for being here, and I want to thank WMUR for showing up. And mostly I want to thank all of you for your participation. We received many submitted questions, and so we used those to create about 15 questions that touch on a variety of topics, from housing and homelessness to the arts and culture. And we're hoping to get some good, you're not going to get a lot of deep answers tonight because we're going to move quickly, but I hope you hear some things that help you make a decision if you haven't made a decision. And I think most of all, whatever happens in November and whoever our next mayor is, I hope all of you will support them and find a way to get involved in our community. And whichever candidate does not come out on top, I would challenge that candidate to perhaps join a board or get involved on a committee to do something to support this administration, because I think we need to come together as a community. We have a lot of issues to work on, and we have a lot of amazing things to celebrate, but we need to do it together. So that's my hope. Without further ado, I am going to turn over the podium to Andy, and we're going to get rolling.
Thank you, boss. All right, let me introduce the candidates. First in alphabetical order, Kevin Kavanaugh. Okay. And our other candidate tonight, Jay Ruay. So the rules tonight, each candidate will get 2 minutes for their opening statement, then 90 seconds for each question, and then if they name the other candidate, they will have 1 minute to respond, and then they'll get 2 minutes for closing statements. So as many of you know, I'm a soccer referee, so to determine who to go first, we're going to have a coin toss. Kevin, since you were on the stage first, we'll let Jay call it. So hold on, got a quarter right here. Jay?
I got to see both sides of it
All right.
first.
George Washington?
Tails.
Not George Washington?
Okay.
Call it in the air.
George Washington.
It is tails.
And
Kevin, would you like to go first or second?
The Patriots did so well this weekend, I'm going to pull a Belichick and let Jay go first.
Okay.
We've been flipping back and forth the last 3 debates, so it's good. It lands on me this
They're
time.
going to call us flip-floppers now, Jay.
You got to watch myself. Thanks for the catch. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
All right. Ready to go, Judy? Okay. Jay, you're up first.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andy and Carol, for hosting, Kevin for being here, and for all of you for being here as well. So we've knocked on a little bit over 30,000 doors now, and I don't say that number to brag or boast, but rather just to talk about how many incredible conversations we've had throughout the city and how consistent and clear that message has been that we've received from folks since we got in February. People always tell me we love our city, we are deeply proud of it, but we're concerned with a number of significant issues that we have, namely the homeless crisis and the need to improve our public safety. And that message has been resoundingly clear. But there's an underlying love and affection for the city of Manchester. They just want to see us reach our full potential. And I feel that too. My family immigrated to Manchester from Montreal back in 1896. And I came to the city in 2006 to work for the mayor at the time. And 13 years ago, I stopped drinking. And I knew that I wanted to get into public service to help people. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm an infantry officer in the National Guard, and I went to work for nonprofits, helping people with addiction, mental health, and homelessness issues. And I think to be successful in those positions, you have to have a vision, a plan, and you have to execute. You have to bring people together, build consensus, and get things done. You have to focus on the mission and focus on results. And that's how we should be governing the city of Manchester. And that's how I would govern were I to be elected. And I think that's what we're showing throughout the course of the campaign as well, with the support that we've been able to gain. We were endorsed by Governor Sununu early on. And following the primary, we were fortunate to be endorsed by Tim Baines, who supported one of our primary opponents. And we were supported by Bobby Stephen, former Senator Bobby Stephen, who's been a lifelong Democrat. And I think that's what we need to be doing in the city, bringing everybody together, building consensus, building bridges, and solving the problems that we have in the city. So I thank you again for being here, and I look forward to the next hour.
Thank you, Jay. Kevin, you're next.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Jay. And it's been a pleasure, really, having these debates, and it's been great for the city, really, to have a great conversation about where you want the direction of the city to go. I was born and raised here in Manchester, graduated public schools here. My wife Carrie and I raised our 3 kids here, and they graduated from Central High School. And Manchester means everything to me. This morning, I was out at 7 a.m. doing a ride-along with the Manchester Police. And what we're doing to take action as a board right now, that's what the police officers were talking about. We were talking about the shot spotter technology that we provided them. We were talking about the new cameras to keep them safe and keep the public safe, and also the new tasers that we're doing, that we've invested in. We are taking action. We are going to move the city forward, and I'm so proud to have the first responders with all the issues we talk about. We talk about homelessness, we talk about affordable housing, drug addiction, and we have to come together. And as an alderman for 8 years, I've worked across the aisle with people to get results and take action. As a state senator, we've worked with that had the highest education funding in New Hampshire history to give back to the communities, and that's what I'll continue to do. As the mayor of Manchester, I'm not going to have to make relationships with people around the state. I'm going to have them. I'll pick up my phone and call them and say, this is what's good for all the cities and towns, and I'll use that to be a cheerleader for Manchester and to make it better, because I've said it all the time, and I mean it so much. We raised our kids here, and I get pushback from that because they say that they're putting a lot of pressure on the kids here, because we want our grandkids to stay here. We care about Manchester, and I've said it all the time, too. Every decision I've made and will make as an alderman or mayor is to better Manchester, to put it in a situation to succeed, and that's exactly what I'll do as mayor. Thank you.
Okay, our first question, it's on homelessness. Over the past several years, the city has made strides in addressing homelessness, including opening the Beach Street Shelter and the new engagement center there. What is missing from the current equation, if anything, and what is one innovative idea you would bring to the table as mayor to end homelessness? Jay, what's your answer?
Sure. So I think one of the innovative things that I've talked about is something along the lines of like a homeless court and meeting people where they are. There are a number of people who are experiencing homelessness that have had a number of either arrests or citations given, and that makes it difficult, if not prohibitive, for them to be able to get into housing or get a job. And I think homeless courts have been used in 19 other jurisdictions around the country as a way to meet a person where they are, determine what their needs are, and then work through the judicial system to break those barriers down to get them into a sustainable life. So I think that's one of the innovative things that we've talked about on the campaign. On a larger level, I think the comprehensive approach that I've talked about is something that we should implement as a city moving forward. And I think a focus on any one side of it. You're not going to arrest your way out of the problem. And I think housing right now, the pace at which we're moving on it is not nearly fast enough. So I think it's going to take a comprehensive comprehensive approach to make sure that we're addressing this so that we're not in the same position that we're in now in 10 years from now. We should be looking to make that incremental progress where we can, and I think that will only occur if we're working in that comprehensive way to do so. You know, we cannot tolerate the disorder, dysfunction that we're seeing on our streets. We also can't tolerate the human suffering that we're seeing, and I don't think that we can stay the course. I think that we have to be much more proactive in this and not reactive in our approach.
Kevin, what's your answer?
Thank you, Andy. Well, I'll point to action again. We talk about action all the time, just like we did a week ago tonight as the Board of Aldermen. We funded 187 new affordable housing units in Manchester, new units that would be available for people that are homeless and affordable housing. We funded for 2 to 3 years 16 new beds for homeless women. That's directly going to impact women living on the street and give them a safe place to stay and a roof over their head. That's action we'll take, and that's action that we did with the federal delegation. We have to work together. We have to work as a board. We have to work as a community. And with the federal delegation we have to help in any way we can. We've talked so many times about this. This is such a local issue. It's a state issue. It's a federal issue. And we have to work together. And again, I'll stand on my record with working with our board as bringing in the homelessness director, an overdose director, and everything we can do. And one thing I've always talked about, if we're doing something that's not going to work, we're going to move. We're going to pivot and try something else. If it's working, we're going to amplify it. It's such a sad problem because every time you talk about someone or a death or someone living in the street, and just this morning we had to wake up a couple people on the streets, and it breaks your heart because you know those are someone's family members. Someone there loves these people, and there's people that we all care about, that we all know have been a part of this, and we have to help all of them.
All right, second question. Kevin will go first on this one. This one's also about homelessness. As another winter fest approaches, what is your plan for the 100-plus homeless people living outside this winter without a shelter or safe place to pitch a tent?
Well, we have the warming center that we opened last winter, and I would have to, as a decision as a board, do that again, I would hope. But one thing we talk about, and in the first forum we had here with the 4 candidates, we talked about housing. You can't talk about homeless if you don't talk about housing, drug addiction, and if you don't talk about opportunity. You know, affordable housing is where it is. We had the event, the first event we had here at the Rex, and we talked about homelessness, we talked about affordable housing, we talked about market rate, and we talked about workforce housing. But also, the next night, I was at an event, and there were 2 couples in their 70s that live in Manchester. They raised their families in Manchester, and they said, what about us? And we want to stay in Manchester, but the first question they ask is, where do we go? And I think it's just the broad spectrum that we have to talk about, from homeless and housing to 55 and over. We have to address the whole problem if we're going to get out of this, and that's what we have to do. And one thing I've talked about, and I said it here before, build, build, build. We've got to bring contractors in. I've got brother-in-laws that are contractors, that we can bring people together to look at the zoning ordinances and how it makes it better and how we can get housing in Manchester from the beginning to people that would retire but want to stay. Because that's the beautiful thing about Manchester. People want to stay. People are coming here, and people want to stay, and I think we have to talk about housing when we talk about homelessness.
Jay, you're up.
Okay. So I think the fact that we're asking this question shows just how far we still need to go as a city. I think there are some good things that have been going on here, but I think, certainly 2 parts. One, we have got to break the cycle that we are in the city. So when individuals have either overdosed or they've been arrested, these are when they are at their maximum points of vulnerability, when we have an opportunity to connect them to services so that they don't wind up back out on the streets. It's those critical moments when a person is going to choose to go left or choose to go right. And having those wraparound services available for them means we don't have to be having these kinds of conversations every wintertime. That, I think, is something that we need to improve upon much more as a city if we're going to get out of this overall. Certainly housing is that a massive piece of this, to make sure that there is housing available for people who are in need. And more broadly speaking, if we're going to build our city long-term, having a workforce development and having places where people can go, more housing means things are going to cost less, basic supply and demand issue. But right now, again, I think we're not moving nearly fast enough to get more housing into our community. So one of the things I talked about at our last debate and talking about over the course of the campaign is providing regulatory consistency for our developers, better incentivizing developers to come in and provide affordable housing, streamlining the permitting process so that this goes much more quickly, and a really quick, as expeditiously as possible, update and reformation of our zoning ordinances. Those are the 4 steps that I would want to take immediately.
You guys kind of skipped ahead to the next question, but I'll ask it anyway. Jay, you'll be on this one. Several thousand units of new housing are under construction in the city right now, but there is an urgent need until then. As mayor, what would you be able to do to currently help people who are in danger of losing their homes or in danger of losing temporary housing with their friends or in hotels due to, or their apartments due to rent hikes?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is where you work with the welfare department within the city. This is where you work with the state. This is where we work with our federal partners to see what stopgap measures there are for individuals who are in trouble. But again, that word is, I mean, inherent in stopgap is that is short term. If we're thinking long term for our city, it goes back to our overall housing needs and the needs to get this into fruition much more quickly than we are in right now. I don't want to be having this conversation in another 10 years that we're still, 20,000 units short or 10,000 units short. The best time to start something like this is yesterday, and the next best time to start is today. I still think that we are not moving nearly quickly enough and treating this with the urgency that it needs. And I just harken back, sorry, I stole your thunder on this one, but harkening back to the 4 things that I talked about in my previous answer, I do think that there's a lot that we can do here. We have some amazing developers, nonprofits, the faith-based community that has been involved in housing in the past, and we can bring them to the table and make this a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. What do you need to expeditiously get more housing into our community, and how can the mayor play a role in that, and who else do we need to bring into the conversation to do that? So, I mean, I think the mayor can play a really important role here in convening people and starting to break down some of those barriers and prohibitions to getting housing to market more quickly.
Kevin, what's your response?
Thank you. Well, again, I'll talk about action. Last Tuesday night, we had $300,000 that we dedicated to landlords and tenants that work together and use that money towards Section 8 housing to help people to keep the homes that they live in now. What I've done as a state senator, in Manchester, we are putting 2,000 units. It's a start. It's not enough. The whole state has to step up as well. I worked with as a state senator to put into place the Housing Appeals Board. That is for developers, and working with developers, there were towns and cities that are saying, no, you can't develop here. And it gives that third option to go somewhere and say, yeah, there is no reason why we can't build. It's a statewide issue. Manchester's doing our part, again, with the 2,000 units that we have that are working on now. And I love going downtown and seeing that building there. But again, we have to work with builders, and we are doing that with builders. And again, just like the action I talk about, the action we took Tuesday, to do that as a board and to continue to put Manchester in a better place to help everyone, because everyone should feel welcome in Manchester.
Okay, next one. Both of you have talked to many Manchester residents. In your discussions with them, what do they consider to be the most valuable city most valuable city services, and what do they consider to be the least valuable city services? As mayor, how would you augment or expand those valuable city services, and how would you either reform or even eliminate those less valuable services? Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. Well, we've all knocked a ton of doors, right? And you talk to a lot of people. And the things I hear about are homelessness, public safety, and affordable housing. And we have to keep on working together to do that. We have to. I'm so proud, again, when you talk about what we've done to lead the effort in the budget process to add 33 new positions for the Manchester Police Department. I'm so proud to work with the training gear and the protective gear for the Manchester Fire Departments. Again, I talked about the education funding that we had when I was a state senator, the largest funding in New Hampshire state history. Public safety, public education, and housing. We're working on housing, and again, we have to do more. And I've talked with developers, and there's so many great opportunities. The best asset for Manchester are its services, are its employees. And when you talk about to the department heads across the city, we're about 30% down with 30% vacancy rate across the board. And I pushed hard, and we're leading the effort that with the HR committee to look at the compensation study. How do we attract people? Like every small business downtown throughout the city is talking about hiring people. And we're dealing with that as an employer in Manchester. That's why we're looking at the compensation study. How do we continue to attract and retain the best employees we have in the state, right here in the city? And I'll continue to look at that and continue to look at other ideas where we can bring people in and keep people here.
So from
Jay?
a city services perspective, when I'm knocking on doors and people are talking to me about some of the concerns they have, whether it's homelessness or public safety, one of the caveats that they always include in there is just how incredible our police and fire have been throughout COVID, through, with the homeless crisis that we're facing. There's a deep amount of trust that our police and fire are making the right decisions and doing extraordinarily well at their job. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's a huge asset. Were I to be elected mayor, one of the things that I would want to do is create a better environment for them. And I think that's something the city can do. So on something like public safety, looking at, my firm belief that the next mayor has to be a supporter of reforming our state's bail laws. A lot of the police officers that I talked to, and when I did my ride along, I saw it firsthand. But, when you have an arrest made at 3 p.m, and before the officer has the opportunity to get back to their office to do the paperwork, that person's already released. We saw it last year, April to December of 2022. Over 700 people were arrested, released, and rearrested. And they were rearrested for assault, weapons charges, and unfortunately even a murder. That is unsatisfactory. That is not something that can continue. And I believe the mayor can play a really strong role in that at the state level and bringing people together, building consensus, and fixing our bail reform laws. And I think that would help our most treasured resource and service in the city, our police, have a much easier time at their job.
All right, we're going to change gears now, go to education. Manchester School District Superintendent Dr. Jen Gillis has advised that the city should have 3 public high schools in the facilities plan she's recommended, as well as 4 public middle schools and 12 public elementary schools. Do you agree, and what is your response to concerns from citizens in the Center City and West Side about fears of losing their neighborhood schools? Jay?
So we've lost about 25% of our student population since 2009. So there's been a dramatic drop-off in the amount of students that we have in our school district. So obviously that necessitates a need to look at our footprint in the school district within the city. And I do think that means we can look at reducing the number of schools that we have. I think my concern with the plan as it is being currently presented and voted on by the school board is the $306 million price tag for that, without a plan that I've seen at least on how to pay for that in the long term. I think my concern is what that's going to look like for the Manchester taxpayer moving forward. Are there ways that we can do this more efficiently, more effectively through renovations when we have a smaller student footprint in our city? Can we renovate our schools and not have that long-term obligated cost for the taxpayer? And I think, Andy, I think you wrote about this, that the mayor at the school board said, I have concerns with approving this when there's piecemeal funding approach to it. And I would share those concerns that if we don't have a defined route for the money that's going to be coming in to pay for this, I'm concerned what that's going to do for the taxpayer. And that's just the first phase of the plan. So what does it look like when the high school is added to that, one of the ones that they're looking at for then one of the next phases? So I think that's my concern off the bat on the long-range facilities plan.
Okay.
Thank you,
Kevin?
Andy. We sit up here as candidates, but first of all, what I am is a dad. We had 3 kids go through public schools in Manchester. I'm so proud of that. And I look at around what we can do better. We talk about homelessness. We talk about attracting people. We have to talk about investing in our kids. And we can look around the state. We can look at Nashville. They can build 2 to 3 different schools. But in Manchester, our schools are the average age of 75 years old. We have to look at this. And, you brought up Jen Gillis. I think she's a phenomenal asset and a great pick we have to lead the schools as a superintendent. And we have to look at things. We can't hide behind an investment in our kids. If we really want to believe, like I do, if you want to invest in Manchester, if you want to invest in having your kids raise their kids here, you have to look at our schools. You have to look at our program. And that's what I'll do. I'm not going to commit to anything without putting it to the public, but we have to. To me, it's an investment in our future. It's an investment in our kids.
All right, Kevin, you'll go on first on this one. This one's on economic development. Recently, Manchester has initiated a $1.5 million branding campaign. I actually had a story the other day from the Palace Theater on their latest event. What's your thoughts on this initiative? Is it a good idea or a bad idea? And as mayor, what are some other ways you'd strategically elevate the city's reputation among the rest of the state and the rest of the country?
Well, I think what we're doing with the Economic Development Office now is doing the rebranding and see what that does and see the numbers and see the information, the data that comes back from that. And I love the data that you see, even from the shutdown and COVID, what numbers come out. And I think it's funny to see the positive response from people inside Manchester. If it's positive or negative for Manchester, it's more positive for people outside of Manchester. And I think a lot of that, we have to look at branding. We have to look at this beautiful building we have, the Palace Theater, and so many things that we have to offer. We were at an event last night, and people were talking about our parks and how can we take better care of our parks. Manchester is such a wonderful place. We have great cultural resources like this, and we have so many parks and what people want in this city, in this state. And I'm willing to look at everything, and I think we should look more at any kind of grant writers we can have to get grants to bring more federal money in. And I'll press on the federal relationships the relationship with the federal delegation we have to do everything we can for Manchester. And I think you can see that with being the only state in the country that received $400 million in infrastructure money. That's what we can do in the future, and that's what we can do with relationships about bringing people together, and that's exactly what I'll do.
Jay?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Let me just get it here. So, recently.
I didn't see him.
Oh, no, here we go. Here it is.
I
So recently, Manchester initiated a $1.5 million branding campaign. What is your take on that campaign? And as a mayor, how would you strategically elevate the city's reputation among the state and the rest of the country in other ways?
Sure. So I think one of the concerns that I hear when we're door knocking, when we're out at events and stuff, is the quality of life issues that people talk about within the city, whether it's homelessness or public safety. I think that the best thing that the mayor can do is address those challenges, because they think it's going to send a message to the rest of the state that Manchester is certainly open for business, that we are a welcoming, safe, inviting city. And I think I was at that branding meeting with you. What was that, last week? I lose track.
I think it was Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, we see each other all the time now, and there was certainly a frustration in the room, and I think there was a frustration of what the perception is of Manchester, and that we are in like a really interesting transition period. I think this was one of the quotes from the meeting, but are we still the mill city in the 19th century, or are we the biopharmaceutical company or a city that is looking towards the future in the 21st century? It was really interesting to hear that conversation, and I think the mayor really plays a leadership role. I was talking to Carol beforehand. Attitude reflects leadership, and I think the mayor can play a really big role in this, in that showing that we can solve problems, showing that we are looking towards the future, showing that we are bringing in housing so that we can attract those young people for future generations, showing that we can make the city a better place for everybody. And I think that signaling effect for the rest of the state is certainly how we can change a negative perception, if there is one, outside of our borders.
Next question's for Jay, and then Kevin. Municipal elections are considered nonpartisan by charter, but obviously they have a partisan element. There are some groups that support candidates from one side of the political spectrum or the other. What is your strategy for bringing unity to both city and school elected governing boards so they function more effectively while also maintaining your independence? Jay.
Sure, that's a great question. So for me, I've always thought that good policies make for good politics. So if you are putting out good policies, if you are listening to people, if you're taking into account a vast array of viewpoints and you're formulating your positions off of what people are telling you, then the politics tends to take care of itself. And I think that's what we've demonstrated throughout the campaign with the support that we have received from, like I said at the beginning of my opening statement, from Governor Sununu, from Tim Baines, a registered independent, and from Bobby Stephen, former Senator Bobby Stephen, a lifelong Democrat. I think you lead by example when you're in an executive position like mayor or governor or whatever the case, or you're running a business. You lead by example. And I think the example that I've set on this campaign is one that can bring people together. One of the things I was most proud of is the community outreach team leaders that we announced 3-4 weeks ago now, with members of the Hispanic, Latino, Vietnamese, Congolese communities. It's showing a willingness to bring forward people who may feel that they don't have a voice in our community, and making sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And that's what we've demonstrated throughout the campaign, and how I would govern were I to be elected mayor.
Thank you, Andy. It's funny, when you go out campaigning, door knocking, you go somewhere, you start talking to someone, in this nonpartisan election, everyone always asks you, Democrat or Republican? All the time. It's just what happens here. But I'll stand by my record, too, of what I've done for 8 years on the Board of Aldermen and in the State Senate. And I've told this story so many times. I went to the State Senate thinking I'm going to be arguing with people. It's going to be terrible. And the last day I was on the floor of the Senate, I said, I'm leaving here with more friends than I showed up with, because that's what you do. And I'll stand by my reputation as working together, whether it's in the Board of Aldermen, whether what we did when we approved our 13 contracts, when there was a stalemate of about 8 months, and the city employees and Mayor Craig and the other all the aldermen appointed me to go to the negotiations. We settled those negotiations in 3 weeks. And we all supported those changes because there was a give and take. And we were giving to the employees that were working through COVID. In the State Senate, I'll stand by that too, because if there was a problem or something we wanted to solve, if you could present it, I was willing to talk, and I'm still willing to talk. If there's an issue we can fix together, we can do it together. And that's exactly what I'll do. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to change what I've done for 8 years as an alderman and 6 years as a state senator. And you don't keep on doing that with not getting results and continue to get elected. But I'll bring that to the mayor's office as well.
Okay, Kevin, you'll start with this one. We're going to build on the last question here. I'm guessing that nobody's going to get 100% of all the votes. I'm guessing you guys are at least going to get 1 vote. But
that's
as mayor, yeah, you never know.
But I think we'll each get more than 1.
You'll get at least 1.
We're guaranteed 1 apiece. At
Yeah,
least, right?
at least 1 apiece, I'm guessing. But as mayor, you are mayor of Manchester, not just mayor of people who voted for you. If you become mayor, how will you reach out to the people who did not vote for you? Kevin, you're first.
I'll call Jay.
And I would be, and we talked about this backstage, but I would be right there
and it's
if I
sincere
would've
too,
called.
really.
Yeah.
And Carol's point too. I mean, you have to work together. We love the city, no matter what, and you don't do it by fighting. I see it with the city employees, with the department heads. You got to figure things out. You got to work together to do that. I will stand by it again. It's 8 years as alderman. You don't win by always talking to people that voted for you. You have to talk to everyone. You have to, whether you're coaching a little league like I did in Manchester or coach football, you don't do it alone. You don't alienate half your team and say, this is what we're going to do. It's not a dictatorship. You do it together. And what I'll bring is that. Try to show my love of the city and how do we fix problems that we have together. And that's how you drag people along, and that's how you fix it. And that's, I'm proud of my record with that in the Senate and again on the Board of Aldermen. And it's just, like, I don't know if Lou D'Alessandro's here, but he says it's all about relationships, and that's what it always is. When I was negotiating contracts when I was with the IBEW, and one of the managers said to me, it's hard to say no when you like someone. And that's what it is. It's hard to say no. So, and that's what I'll bring. It's just who I am, and I'm not going to hide behind that.
Okay. Jay, I think by the rules you get an extra minute now since he mentioned your name.
I will exercise that option. Thank you. So one of the things I've thought about is, if I were to get elected, I believe very deeply in a bottom-up approach. I don't know how you govern. I certainly don't know how you campaign if you're not talking to people every day, which is why I've put such an emphasis on door knocking and getting out there in front of people. So one of the things I've thought about was I would love to do ward by wards every single month. So I think that would give you an opportunity to hear directly from people who may have supported you, may not have supported you, but holding a town hall or something, of that nature in every single ward, starting in January, Ward 1 or wherever, and just going down the list and talking to everybody in the community, meeting them where they are, giving them updates. I mean, Andy, I know you loved going to every Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. I don't know how many people watch those. But having a mayor that's involved in the community and that's out there every single day, talking to folks and holding a meeting where they're giving updates to the community. I think that's essential. And I think that's how you can start to bridge gaps that may exist. And to Kevin's point, it's hard to hate up close. The more you get in front of people, the more you know somebody, then that's, oh yeah, I invoked him.
Yeah, he has another minute now.
I didn't learn my lesson at the first one. But I think it's so much better when you are in front of people and you're hearing their criticisms, their concerns, hopefully always constructive criticisms, but being in front of folks when they're telling you exactly what's going on in their community, that is the only way to govern. So my pledge is that I would want to hold ward-by-ward meetings as soon as I got elected to start providing those updates, hearing from people that agree with me and disagree with me more importantly, because it's, at the end of the day, you're only going to get better if you're recognizing where you're falling short and making corrections to those errors.
I guess, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the ward-by-ward meetings since Jay said your name? What are your thoughts on the ward-by-ward meetings?
I think they're great. We've been doing those with police and fire and hitting all the firehouses, I think, for a couple of years now, and it's just, I'm all for it. I'll go back to my days negotiating, and we had negotiations that were falling apart, and we were out on strike for 4.5 months, and you learn from that. No one wins from people being divided. We were out on strike. It didn't help the company. It didn't help the employees, and you learn from that. And how do you stop that? You come together and work together, and communication is great, too.
Okay. Going on to the next question here. Jay, you'll be up first. We actually mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we're going to elaborate on it. Manchester is struggling to find essential cities employees in places like the school district, fire, police, and public works departments. What are your specific suggestions to help retain and attract employees?
Sure. So certainly salary and benefits. I think that's certainly something that you have to look at. I'm looking forward to seeing when I met with the police unions earlier this year. They talked about the Yarger-Decker and reopening next year when that study comes back, and would certainly want to look and take a look at what that means for their salaries as compared to others around or cities of comparable sizes. So I think that's certainly a part of it. I think depending on which department we're talking about, for instance, yesterday I was door knocking in Ward 8 and I ran into a teacher, and she was telling me about some of the concerns that she had with the kids in her class who were being unruly, and they were acting out in class, and there was no repercussions or consequences, and it made for a difficult environment in her classroom. And she was at the end of her rope. She was really very frustrated. So in terms of attracting and retaining teachers, I think that's something that you would bring up in the school board and the policy committee when it looks at, how are we addressing behavioral challenges within our schools? And then I think it's different for each department how you attract and retain. But I would start with a conversation with the people who are doing their jobs every single day, whether it's police, fire, and school district, whatever the case may be, and finding out what their concerns are. And then trying to look for solutions after that. But again, it's hearing from people who are doing the job daily on the ground, and then working to find solutions based off of their concerns. So it's a listening process more than it is speaking. I had a job down working on the fishing docks one time, and the guy told me you had 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Use them in that proportion. So if I were to work with any department in the city, that's how I would approach it. I would listen, and then we would act.
Thank you, Jay. All right. Kevin, can you elaborate?
Thank you. I talked about the 13 contracts that I led the negotiations on, and we dealt with a lot of that, and we talked a lot about this and what we're going to do. And I do think it's a mistake to stay with Yarger-Decker, but the thing we have to do is what we spearheaded with the HR committee is the compensation study and what we can do and how many different things we can look at, whether it is the 30% deficit we have in vacancies, to start a daycare center, to do something we can do, whether to me, what I did for work, we had a 5.5-year pay scale. And you got to that top pay at 5.5 years, and you kept there. It was something attainable. And we could do that. You look at some of the pay scales in the city now, there's 12 and 13 years long. And if we want to keep, and I still stand by every employee teacher, everyone we have, department heads, that they stayed in Manchester because they love it, and we have to keep them here. What we also did after the shutdown, I led with the assistant DPW director, and to make all city employees from the Department of Public Works, Waterworks, Health Department, and make them essential workers. During the shutdown, they weren't working, but they were working every day along police and fire. And we passed that again, bipartisan support in the state Senate for every group of that DPW health department and throughout the state. And that's the kind of things you do to keep people working for you.
Okay. And just one thing before we move on, for folks at home who don't know what Yager Decker means, that was the name of a consulting firm that recommended certain salaries for certain levels of employees many, many years ago, well before my term, before my years. So just in case you didn't know what that term meant. Oh, you were here then?
No.
Oh, geez. I wasn't here then
maybe
either,
Mr.
but
Baines
I did
was,
my
but yeah,
research,
yeah.
so. All right. We're going to change gears now. Arts and culture. Recently, the city has invested in several public art mural projects, including the one just a block away from here, the big Manchester mural on Hanover Street. As mayor, what would you do to further support investment in public art? Or would you not? Kevin.
Just not invest in what? Public?
What would you do to further support public art, or would you not support public art?
Oh, no, absolutely support. I mean, if you haven't seen my mailers, it must be a D or an R, I guess, right? But I think they're beautiful. That's where a lot of the mailers, the picture I had taken is in front of the new mural on Hanover Street, the back of here, of the Rex, and down by the Arms Park. I think it's beautiful. I think we have to keep that whole culture of arts in Manchester. It's throughout the state, of course, but definitely in Manchester. I think it's such a culture here. And it's one of the best things that we have in Manchester, the diversity of celebrating everything we have together. Whether, again, Manchester, whatever you do for work, what you look like, who you love, you should be welcoming here. And the arts in Manchester are great, and even this building. This is something we can do together and keep the arts going in Manchester.
Okay.
So I just had the opportunity to tour the Currier Art Museum, and it was beautiful. And one of the things that we talked about during my tour was how much of a great thing this is for the city to have. And on a larger sense, I mean, of course, it's beautiful to be able to tour, but in a larger sense for the city, it's something that attracts people coming into the city as well. So arts and culture, and how do you trying to attract and retain younger people coming into the city, or visitors to stop through Manchester before they go somewhere else up north when they're leaf peeping or something like that. So I think these are core assets that the city of Manchester has that are certainly good for us from an economic sense, from a cultural sense, and for the long term, I think that's something that we absolutely should be looking at.
Okay. All right, building on that question, it looks like you both support the arts. How do you believe Manchester is comparing to other cities in New Hampshire like Concord and Nashua when it comes to its identity as a hub for the arts? Is the city doing enough to invest and promote itself as a destination for those seeking fine art, music, and live entertainment? What are your thoughts on that? Jake, you're first.
Sure. So this is where I think you can work with the Economic Development Office, where you can create these public-private partnerships where, it's not something that the city always has to be financially on the hook for, but it's certainly something that the city can play a role in. And I think Eric and Jody are doing a fantastic job down there, but working with them, working with some of the businesses in the community, working with nonprofits in the community, and certainly, Peter Ramsey here. I think we have a wealth of talent and opportunity in the city to promote arts and culture within the city of Manchester.
Okay.
Thank you. It's exactly right, and I do have to build upon that with the Courier, because they had a great job. They brought us both in there. Right. Yeah, they improved on it a little bit. So. No, but I think it's right, and everything you hit on with that to attract people to that. And you hear about the history of the Courier and how world famous it is. And some of the paintings they have there are phenomenal. Our kids went there, and they did across the street, the home, they can't remember the name of it, but they have art classes that they had for kids. And you promote that from kids at a young age and keep them interested. Because the Courier we could tap into that, and we have a great resource there. We should be advertising that in the Manchester airport when people are coming off the planes. And it's everything we can do, because we all have to. Arts is such an essential part of the fabric of the community. We have to continue to work together to make sure it succeeds.
Okay, we're going to go back to another question we had earlier again. As some of you may know, I write about the planning board sometimes in Manchester Inklink, and one of the things I've been talking about in the last few months is fire impact fees and school impact fees for new developments. If they provide affordable housing, they can get a waiver for some extra fees they have to pay for the additional people coming in who will be using the fire department and the school district. With all these new apartments coming online, what are your thoughts on the impact that those new units will be having on the city's services? Kevin, you're first.
Well, again, I think it's an investment. I think we have to look at that. We have to invite development. We can't sit here and say there's a housing shortage and not help developers come into the city. I think our planning department does a great job. I think they work with them, with developers, and they'll continue that to whatever resource we need or the Economic Development Office needs. I was talking to an employee there, and he said one of the chains that came into the city said this was the easiest, seamless process starting our business here than everywhere we had in the country. And that's great. And we have to continue to look at everything, and that's what's so important of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We get to look at that, and we get to decide if there's going to be any waivers on that or 79E. 79E is granted, and I'm glad to keep on doing that. We're doing that work now.
Sure. So I think.
Sorry for the...
I didn't want to interrupt the clap. So I certainly think we have to better incentivize developers for coming in here to do this kind of work. I think when I'm talking to developers, a couple of the things that they mentioned to me is better incentivize their project because their margins are low, particularly when it comes to affordable housing. So things that we can do to waive some of the impact fees. Obviously, you have to be judicious about that. I don't think you can have one blanket rule where you're waiving all of it because that the city coffers are going to suffer. But I do think on certain projects it absolutely makes sense to do that. And I do think another thing that they tell me about is the need to streamline the permitting process. If it is going to take 1, 2, 3 years from the time that a project goes before the planning board or the zoning board to the time that a key goes in the door and the person moves in, I think that's unacceptable. I think we have to make sure that this is moving as expeditiously as possible. And again, this is one of those bottom-up things that I've talked about before. Developers that I've met with they've given me a list of things that they would love to see either changed or altered, augmented, things that would make their lives easier. And I would love to sit down and come up with what is that action plan for it. So are there 100 ideas? What can we get done in the first 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, and start really pressing forward that and putting some meat on the bones. Having a vision for it is one thing, but having that action plan in place is something entirely different. And I think the next mayor really has to put their shoulder into getting this stuff done as quickly as possible.
I'm getting used to waiting for the clapping to end now. Okay, I think I got it.
That was my fault on the last one.
Sorry about that, guys. All right, Jay, I think you're clairvoyant because you actually moved into our next question here. There seems to be a general consensus about the need to streamline the permitting process. Could you, and also you, Kevin, highlight some specific things that you would do to streamline the process?
Sure. So one of the things that was mentioned to me was change of use. And so I had one developer talk to me, and he said that he had been renting out to a doctor. And he had to go before the board and ask for a change of use, and he thought it was going to be like a really quick process because the person that was moving into that office was a dentist. All intents and purposes, this is a doctor, right? And he got pushback at the time because they actually had to start going over the definition of a doctor and what was going to change. And I mean, this to me should have just been like a really quick, common sense, yes, this is an easy thing, but it hamstrung him, and the process dragged out for months, and he ended up losing a tenant as a result of that. And that to me is problematic. So that's one of the things I think, exercising a little bit more common sense in certain instances. But I think that was one of the ones that I've heard, repeatedly from different people within the city, and one of the ones that I would look towards.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I think our department heads and our departments are great. They're, we have 30% vacancy rate. They're doing a lot more with less. And we got to keep on helping them everywhere we can. And how do you do that? And again, it's all about bringing people together. The builders and the departments can work together, and we have. And we can streamline. Again, the building process is tougher. I mean, we've got 2,000 units coming forward, and it's not enough. And we can keep on working for ADUs, and anything we can look at to help ease the cost of the burden of working with the city to make sure we can all work together. I talked with a car dealership, and granted, it was coming through the shutdown, and it took about 8 months for a new dealership to open up. But that can't happen. I know there was a different time, but we can work together. And again, our department heads, our city employees are willing to work with people, and we just have to make sure we bring them together and give them that connection to work together and continue to speed up any process like that.
Okay, next question's on transportation. Kevin, you'll go first. People need to get to work. Some Manchester residents leave the city for work, some don't, and some non-Manchester residents come to the city to provide our city with the employees they need. The city's businesses. As mayor, do you feel the city's public transportation is adequate? Also, share your thoughts on ensuring the city has adequate parking in case it doesn't need any more public transportation. And also, what are your thoughts on traffic as well as commuter rail? A lot of questions there.
7-part
Yeah,
question.
7-part.
Right.
You
Remember
can
half.
have a
I'll
few
get
extra
the other
seconds
half.
if you want.
I think you were getting to rail, right? I'm all for rail. I think we have to look at that. When I was on the Transportation Department in the State Senate, we were trying to get federal money just to study if it's feasible to come to Manchester and New Hampshire. We should look at it, because I know my office was on the west side, and when I was driving over Granite Street, I'd see a flood of traffic coming over. You know, you talk about the environment, we can get cars off the street, we can make it easier. I think we have to look at rails and trails. We've been building on those to let people take their bikes. And also you look at having the rail service go right into the Manchester airport. Avello, in the last 4 months, have, I forget the number now, I think it's, they're 10,000 passenger level. People want to come here. 55% of that are coming from North Carolina. People want to come here, and how do we make it easier? And I am all for the rail service. Again, when I was on the Transportation Committee, we worked with a group of about 100 business owners to get that study done. And when you look downtown, and when you look at the biofab cluster that's downtown, 7,000 potential new jobs coming into downtown Manchester, I think we have to look at rail.
Okay.
So my concern with rail is the long-term obligatory or obligated cost that would go along with it, and certainly the upfront cost as well. Every time that there's a new study being done, the cost increases dramatically. So right now it sits at about $800 million, and the annual cost, operating costs for that are $16 to $17 million. When they do ridership projections, when we've seen around the country, the actual ridership always fails to meet the expectations for it. So my concern is for the taxpayer and what's going to happen in the long term. You know, by the time we actually broke ground on this, is it going to cost $1 billion? Is it going to be, or more than that? My concern is going to be for the Manchester taxpayer in this instance, and ensuring that we're not going to get, left holding the bag when it comes to paying for this in the long term. But in terms of transportation more broadly, I mean, transportation is an inherent government function. Making sure that our streets are safe, that our potholes are filled, that people can get to and from work, that commerce isn't being stopped as a result of poor road construction. Certainly in the long term, over the next 10, 20 years as our city continues to grow, making sure that we're factoring in parking as we're building new structures within the city as well. That should all be done in the planning phases to make sure we're capturing the needs of the community in the long term during that planning process so that we don't have problems in the out years.
Okay. Jay, you'll go first on this one. Tell voters why they should have confidence in your leadership as the CEO of the city, and what will the city look like 2 years from now under your leadership?
Sure. So I think if you look at my background, and I talked about this a little bit in the opening statement, my professional experiences being in the Army and working in nonprofits, they've taught me a great deal. And I think that would give, certainly makes me a strong candidate for a position such as this, because to be successful in the positions, whether it's an infantry officer or in the nonprofits, a vision is important. But that also comes secondarily to having a plan to implement. So when I had my one of my Army trainings last week, and we were planning in the out months for our April drill. So we were planning 6, 7, 8 months ahead. That's how the city of Manchester should be planning. We shouldn't be reactive. We should be proactive. And I think that's, thank you. So I think that's one of the approaches that I would bring to the table, is that what are the second, third, fourth order consequences of the decisions that we are making today, and how is that going to impact everything else that we do? And that's how I think how a leader should be thinking. We can't just think in those 2-year, 4-year, 6-year timeframes. We've got to be thinking long term and actually having meat on the bones for the plans that we're articulating. So one of the things I talked about in my press conference for homelessness was that I would look to bring a plan to the city of Manchester in, right as if I were to get elected, as soon as I were to get elected, talking about here's what we're looking to accomplish in 90 days, 120 days, and in 1 year. And that would be my promise is to the city of Manchester, that as a leader, I would come to you and explain to you, and so that my plan, so that you can then hold me accountable.
Kevin?
Could you just repeat it, please?
Sure. Tell voters why they should have confidence in your leadership as the CEO of the city, and what will the city look like in 2 years from now under your leadership?
Well, they can have confidence because I can tell you one thing, I'll be approachable, and I'm willing to work with people. And my record as an alderman, as a state senator, I've shown people that. I've proven it. If there's an issue we can fix together, I'll do that. And I'll work with anyone that wants to fix that issue. What Manchester will look like in 2 years, I want to see some of those 7,000 jobs already here. I want to see more housing. I want to see a vibrant Riverwalk downtown with a multi-use building where we can have a summer concert series there. And people are celebrating, maybe a footbridge over Merrimack River. There's so much potential here. And the changes and the things we've done as 8 years in Manchester as an alderman, people want to be here. People are coming here. People that are here want to stay here. And I want people to say in 2 years, yeah, he's right. People do want to, and they want to stay, and we're going to be able to stay because of the changes we're making and the progress we're making. And I think we have so much chance for success here in Manchester, and we have that because of the citizens of Manchester.
Okay. I've run out of questions. Hopefully I was good as Scott Spradlin last week. At least my hair is probably a little better.
But not as good as his mom the week before at Riverwoods.
Oh, yeah, she was really
tough.
good.
She was tough. We got to do that first every time. These guys are easy.
So thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you for the readers who provided the questions. Thank you to my boss, Carol Robideau, for putting this all together. Thank you to the Palace Theater. And it's time for closing remarks. We got 2 questions, 2 minutes for each question. Yeah, boss, you can wait. You can wait.
I was going to forget the
No,
closing.
I got the thing right here. Good. Yeah. All right.
Talk about office politics.
Yeah, jeez.
I'll make it quick, I swear.
You can have your 2 minutes. All right, Kevin, you go first.
Thank you. And thank you, Carol and Andy, for having us. And thank you for all being here. There's been a pretty aggressive slate of events, and the people showing up is incredible. People care about this city. And I just want to, again, let everyone know I was born and raised here. This is my hometown. And every decision I make, everything we try to do, will be to make Manchester better and put it on a position to succeed. I think there's great possibility here. I think our future is bright. I think there's so many things we can do. I know we have our challenges, and I know we're going to work on them. As my time as an alderman and senator working with the first responders in Manchester and around the state, that's why they've earned their endorsement for the Manchester Police and Manchester Fire. They've proven to them I have their back, and we will work together. I guarantee you that, and you can vote for whoever you want, and if I win, I'm going to be welcoming to fix the problems of Manchester.
Jay, final remarks?
So thank you again, Carol and Andy, for hosting this. This was another fantastic event, just like we had in the primary. Thank you, Kevin, as well, for being here. We couldn't do it without you here. And thank you again, everybody, for and thank you again, everybody, for showing up to this. It's incredible to see the civic pride that we have here in our community. You know, we do have a great deal of promise here in the city of Manchester. I hear it every day from people that I talk to, and I think that there is an underlying level of frustration from people, but they're about the need to fix the homeless crisis and improve our public safety. That frustration, though, is born out of a love for the city of Manchester and what people see as our promise and our potential. So when I talk about this race and the things that we have, the potential that we have for the future, we talk about the need to address these quality of life issues to really open the doors and set us on an incredible trajectory moving forward into Manchester's future. And it's been an honor for me to run for this office, and I would certainly hope that I could earn your support on November 7th. So thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you, guys. That was terrific debate. I think Peter Ramsey probably wanted more fireworks, but sorry, Peter. They just get along. That's okay. Thank you all for coming. The key to the future of our city, in my opinion, is for us all to get involved and engaged. Please support your local businesses. Instead of renewing a subscription to Netflix for a month, why don't you buy some tickets to the Rex or the Palace? Come on out for dinner to City Hall Pub, to Bonfire, to Diz's Cafe. We have so many business owners here that are ready to serve you. This is what keeps our city going, and this is what connects us to each other. So support local business, support your candidate of choice, get your friends and neighbors out to vote, and after the election, make sure you still show up to let candidates know what you need from them and what's missing. That's part of our job too. So please engage with us in any way that you can. We'd love to have you as VIP supporters, but we mostly just want you to read the Ink Link every day. So subscribe to that morning newsletter. Thank you all for being here. Have a really great night.